Okay, so today's session is called AI Unhyped, and the idea is about practical examples of about how business owners and managers can use AI in business. Because there's a lot of hype going on out there. People saying AI can do everything. People saying that AI can't do anything, that it hallucinates, it has a lot of problems. And the question is, what can AI actually do at the moment and what's it likely to be able to do in the future? And what I want to run through today is giving you some really practical examples and tips of how you can use AI within your own businesses. So the goal, as I've said here, is to give practical examples of how you can use AI within your own business to give you some ideas of the sort of things that people are using AI for and what you might be able to do in your own business. We've got people joining from all different sorts of industries. We've got people joining from around Australia. We even have participants who are joining from overseas, which is really exciting. So there's a lot of diversity, but I'm sure that at least some of the examples that I run through will resonate for each one of you. So I think that you will definitely get something out of it. Now, just a bit of housekeeping. At the end of the session, there will be a Q&A session. There's a Q&A button down the bottom. If you click it and post your question, I will try and make sure that I make it through every single question at the end. And if I don't, I will make sure that I do answer it to you separately. So please make sure that you put in your questions. We've had a lot of people who've expressed an interest in joining. And so I think hopefully there'll be a lot of great questions, a lot of great feedback, and I'm looking forward to seeing, what you will make of the topics that I discuss. So just before we dive in, I'll run through what is it that I'm going to talk about today. So the first question is, why is AI important to you? As a business person or a manager, why should you care about AI right now? And also, what is AI? So when we talk about, well, why is AI important? What do we actually mean by it generally? And then I'll be running through, and this is the bulk of what I'll be talking through, is specific examples. So I'll go through some examples in marketing. I'll go through some sales examples. I'll do some job management, so how you run and manage your own jobs. I'll give some customer support examples, because most people have some form of customer support or accounting support. I'll do some HR, because we all have people, and then also an example for research and data gathering. Also, some people have raised questions with me about the privacy of the data and how AI works with the servers being overseas. I'll dive into that and talk a bit more about how that works with some regulated industries. I'll talk about how you can get your people on board with this. And finally, once we've covered all of that, what could be the next steps for how you could get started yourself? So the first question, why should you care? So if you'd asked me 2 years ago what I thought about AI, I would have said it's expensive, it doesn't have a great return on investment, it's for really big multi-billion-dollar businesses, it's very niche. Google can use it, Apple can use it, Microsoft can use it, but you were talking $100 million projects that were giving pretty marginal returns. And a lot of AI projects then were failing. Today, there was an article just recently saying AI could replace 300 million jobs. And that's AI at the moment, not what AI could do in 2 years. That's right now. AI could replace the equivalent of 300 million jobs. So some of that is jobs being completely replaced, and some of that is jobs at least partially being replaced. So maybe instead of 10 people, you have 8 people or 5 people or 2 people. So if that's what AI can do today, and that's been in 2 years, what could it be doing next year, or what could it be doing the year after? So this is the picture that I have over here. You have a dinosaur and the comets coming in, and we don't want to be like the dinosaurs. We want to be anticipating change and preparing for that change, because we all know what happened to the dinosaurs. That we don't want that to be us. So the technology will change. That's a guarantee. But in the future, strategic advantage will go to people who have access to their data, people who have an understanding of AI and how it can help them, and people who have experience of embedding it within their business. Because AI a year from now or 2 years ago will be better and more capable. But as I'll run through today, AI is only as good as what you give it. garbage in, garbage out, as the saying goes. And if you're preparing for AI now, when AI gets better, that will only mean it is even better for you, versus people who haven't prepared, they won't be able to take advantage of better AI in the same way. Every single business should be looking at AI within their business. I don't care if you're a 1-person, 2-person business, or you're a 1,000-person, million-person business, you should be looking at AI. We have 20 projects at the moment right now that are to improve our operations, our customer support, our billing, everything like that. We have 20 distinct projects where we're using AI. So that is quite incredible. And that's happened in 6 months. And, you know, there's not a week or a month that goes by that I don't go, oh, there's another project for the back burner. So there's huge opportunities for anyone who's willing to take this up. So we've said, why is AI important? Well, what is AI? So a lot of AI, so we've got AI is a piece of software, essentially, that takes some text, a picture, some sound, or a video, and it follows some instructions to produce something similar, some text, a picture, some sound, or a video. The difference with AI and what we've typically used computer software for is because it can follow general instructions. Previously, software would do exactly what you said. Now, AI can reason. It can use knowledge. It can use pattern recognition. It does it generally. It can understand ambiguity, and it can make inferences in ways that software could never do before. And we'll show how powerful that is when you're trying to build, say, a customer support bot, and you're dealing with customers who are saying vague things, they don't answer questions, and an AI can actually understand what they've said, what needs to be said, and can then coach them through. So AI can take a lot of these different formats of information and produce a lot of formats of different information. Now, I'll go through some examples. You've got text to image, and that's something like Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion. You type in a description of a picture, you get a picture as a result. You give some audio, you get text. Whisper, Transcribe, or Rev are examples of that. You take an image and you get some text as a result, and that's Amazon Textract. So you can imagine a picture of something and you feed it into an AI and it describes what's in that picture. And then probably the champion, the thing that we use a lot in business is text to text, because in business, we have a lot of text. We have emails, we have meeting transcriptions, we have invoices, we have purchase orders, we have specification documents, we have policies and procedures. All of these things are text, and we typically want to produce text. We want to produce an email or a procedure or an instruction, a work instruction. So the thing that everyone's been hearing about the last 6 months, ChatGPT. There are other AIs. We have Bard from Google, and we have Llama from Facebook, which is the open source challenger. So there's a lot of different AIs. Today, the large part of what I'll be talking about is text to text, because that's what is generally used in business. And I'll predominantly be using ChatGPT as an example, but this would apply equally to Bard or any of the Llama-based models or some of the others as well. And I'll talk a bit more about that when we get to privacy. So that's sort of the basis of, why would you care? What is AI? Let's run through some examples. And this is the thing, when AI, ChatGPT first came out, everyone's going, you can use AI to do this. So it's the most common, and it's content generation. So you can use it to create some mass emails. You can use it to create blog posts. You can use it to create web pages. You can use it to create scripts for videos. And a lot of people are doing this. And what I'll do is I'll run through an example of how you can do this. And it's really useful because it gives some tips in specifically the differences in how you use an AI to how you might use a person. So here, what I'm doing is, this is the OpenAI playground, and the OpenAI playground here allows me to use ChatGPT. Now I'll change this to version 4, which is just a more advanced version of ChatGPT. And This is a similar interface to what you will have used in the web interface. If you've used that, it just gives you a little bit more control. Over here, we have a system, and you can think of this as important instructions. And then this is just the general conversation. So the important instructions are things that the AI needs to consider more strongly, and it like a set of rules, essentially, and this is the request. So if we look through this, I'm giving an example of producing a 90-second video script for a made-up family gym. So what I've done here is I've said your role. So you're a content writing robot who excels in writing attention-grabbing content and marketing that drives sales. So what I'm doing here is I'm priming the AI in the role that I'm expecting it to play, and that will help it interpret what it's going to do. And you'll find that if you tell it and give it a role, it tends to perform better than if you just ask it a question. Like if you need it to explain something, you can say you're a teacher or an instructor. Giving it a role is important. So I'm saying you write exclusively for a family-focused gym, fit together family fun. This is just a made-up business that I created for the purpose of this demonstration. And here I give it the target market. So I say it's aimed at families with children in the Claremont area of Perth, Australia. I've talked about who the core decision maker is. Then I've got the brand voice. In order to appeal to the mother and children, the brand voice should maintain a balance. I've got some example terms, and you'll notice I'm giving the AI a lot of information here. And this will be a theme as I go through all the examples, is the more information you give the AI, the better decisions and the better advice and the better content it will be able to generate for you. Because if I just said, can you generate me a 90-second video script? I will get a video script, but I won't like it because it won't have the right tone, it won't have the right topic, it won't have the right information. So I'll give some examples of offers that we do. And one of the key ones is this family fun night. So the concept here is it's a gym for families. And now what I'm saying is, can you write the copy for a video script aimed at a mother or father watching YouTube? Do not include imagery or video direction. The hook should be that they're tired. So I'm giving it some information about what I'd like it to do. Here's the offer. And I want to follow hook, educate, offer sequence using the brand voice. Now you'll also see I've put this in square brackets, and that's referring back to the brand voice here. And you'll see that this is something that I also do a lot. It's not necessary, but it just helps. And this will be one of the pro tips that I put at the end. The more that you do things like that, where you refer back to other parts of your document, the more accurate you'll find the AI is. And I'm after a 90-second promotional video. Now what I can do is I just make sure my maximum length is set up, my model is set up. Now, if I don't have the maximum length, it will limit how much content it will give me. So I'm going to hit submit. And so for the market that I'm aiming at, tired of yet another evening watching the screens captivate your family. And it's come back and it's given me a really nice script, like I think. And you'll see that it's gone and it's generated. And for the brand voice that I've chosen, I think that's actually pretty good. Now I can go and I could, let's say, oh, that's not quite what I wanted. I can delete that and then say, I'm after a 90-second promotion video with a strong CTA, which is call to action at the end. And I could write call to action. ChatGPT knows what that means, and I can submit. I will actually get a different one now. And here's another one. Okay. And potentially you could record multiple videos and then A/B test this to see which one works. So the idea here is that by giving it good information about my business, giving it good information about our brand voice and our target market, it's actually gone and produced what I would consider to be a pretty decent video script. Now I can go through and I can add another message and ask it to refine it, or I could just use this essentially as is. So if we look at, if you're going to use an AI for marketing, you need to give it information about what's the brand voice and the style. And if you have examples, and this will again be something I reinforce later, is examples of examples of what you want are really powerful, because rather than explaining to the AI what you want, you give it an example. And if you do both and you say, our brand voice is fun, exciting, energetic, here's an example of some text, here's an example of a blog post, it will then use that voice in subsequent content. Examples are very, very powerful. And it's one of the big tests of AI is, can AI do a problem without being given examples? And what you'll find is that typically their performance jumps if you give them examples of what you want. And even if you're building a video script, but you have an example of an email or a Facebook promotion, it will still give the AI an example of the voice that you want. Give it background. The more background you give about the business, what you do, why people would choose you, the more the AI is able to tailor the content. And you can see that in the call to action was that it really called out to the target market of why they would want to be interested in the ad. And then who is the target market? Now, that's really good. Now, one of the things that you can do as a pro tip is that you can actually ask ChatGPT to act as your advisor and ask questions. So, for example, you could say, I'm going to write a video. What are the things that I should consider in terms of generating the script? And it will actually then give you the questions and you can then answer those questions. So you could say, can you act as a marketing advisor? I want to do a video. What questions should I be considering before I do this? The other thing that you can do is that you can set up another session. You can paste in the copy that the AI gives you, and you can ask this other version to critique it. Or you can just go in here and you can say, can you act as a video advertising expert and give constructive feedback on this script? Now, you'll see there's a spelling error there. I don't have to correct it. AIs these days are smart enough that they will work around spelling mistakes. Even if you get words wrong, they are reasonably good at dealing with that sort of ambiguity and confusion. Now you'll see here, it's come back and it's said, right, here's some feedback. Now, I've done some versions of this, and sometimes the feedback is incredibly insightful and valuable. So it's a really good idea that even if you really like the script, just ask it to critique it. It's surprising because you'd think, well, it's an AI, it's done its best job. It often hasn't. Sometimes you can ask it for multiple rounds of feedback. So I can now go and say, can you apply this feedback just points 1, 3, 5. Okay, and now it will go and it will rewrite it. And I won't go and watch it do that, but that's just a really useful technique. And I could then ask it again for additional feedback. So now if we move into using AI in the sales domain, one of the areas which I've seen a lot of value in is opportunity analysis or request for proposal analysis. So in some businesses, you get a lot of requests for proposal come through. You can't look at all of them. And so somebody has to sit there and review them. And that's certainly been the case with us. And, you can spend hours going through requests for proposal only to find out, well, they're not suitable, they're not suitable, they're not suitable, and only a small fraction of them are. And this is often the case in things like construction, manufacturing, and so on. If you can describe the rules of, well, what is it that you do? What are the things that make for a good job? Then you can actually get an AI to review that request for proposal and tell you, is it a good proposal or not? And so, for example, I was able to, for us, create a set of criteria and say, this makes for a good job, this makes for a good job, this makes for a good job, and give it a whole list of things, and then it would score them. And I was able to then take that score and order the RFPs, and we just work from the top and then work down. And that's a really powerful way to limit the number. And versus somebody spending hours and hours every day, the AI does it in seconds. And, one of the more interesting things was, whereas I had a person doing it every day or every second day, with an AI, I can get it doing it in real time. And if it does it in real time, then that means that we get our tenders in first. And that typically means that, you're often at the front of the queue for consideration. And you don't just use it for opportunity analysis. You can actually use it to write the proposals itself. So if you were to give the AI the request for proposal, and you also give it your company information. So if you say, well, our company does this, we specialize in this, here's our point of difference, here's our policies on health and safety, or all of the different things, then you take the request for proposal. You can then say, can you please write a 2-paragraph response to this question? And it will then go and write that. And versus if you just went into ChatGPT and said, I have a question that says, can you quote your health and safety policy? It will write you 2 paragraphs, but they'll be completely made up. They won't be useful. You have to put in the context about your business so that it's actually being truthful. And what you can also do is you could say, can you write a 2-paragraph response to this question? I want to make sure that you cover this point, and this point, and it will actually then run through and do that. And that's a really, really powerful way to generate high quality proposals very quickly. You can also generate responses to customer emails. So customers often ask the same questions. You imagine that you get a question, you could literally paste their email into the AI with all of this background information and example responses, and it will then formulate a reply that answers the customer's questions. Some of the more interesting things are that you can use an AI to take requests for bookings. So, and this will be the example that I'll run through. You can get the AI to get an emailed request for a booking, and it can then liaise with the customer, ask questions, and then place the booking without anyone having to intervene. And you can also do that for things like custom, semi-custom items. So I have a customer who has items which are manufactured semi-bespoke, and often a customer will email up and say, can you send me another one like you did last year? And there's a set of questions that need to be asked to go, well, does it still have this? Do you still want that? Do you also want this add-on? And those vary by product. You can instruct an AI as to what those things are, and you can actually then get it to respond to the customer's inquiry. And so that's the example that I'll run through now. So this is the same example that we had before. So it's for Fit Together Family Fun, but now the role is a customer support robot. And so if we go through the customer support robot, I've included the brand voice and the terms because I think that will be useful for the robot to know. And then what I'm saying here is that there's the family fun fitness nights are running on these dates. We're also having a family breakfast burnout, which is on these nights. And then what are the typical requests that they deal with? So if it's a refund request, if it's a scheduling issue, offer to change to another time or offer times that might suit them. If there's a problem, try to understand the issue and offer them a discount. If they're trying to book a time, make sure you know which night they want, try to get first and last name, find out how many people in their family are coming in them, and what their goals are for booking are. If someone asks for a refund, try and remind them about what their goals might be, that they're still valid, and try and dissuade them. So here's an example of a request that might come in via chat or via email. Hi, can I book in for the night at the end of the month? David. Now I've included the name at the end just because we want to check that the AI understands that that's my name. Let's hit submit. And you'll see that it's been able to work out that because I've asked for the end of the month, I meant the one that it's for the Saturday, the 29th of July. And you'll notice that it's asked me another question. Now, I'm not going to answer the question because I'm just going to be obstructionary. Yes, that is the right night. Okay, so I'll just say, I want my son, and I'm not answering the question directly. You'll notice that I'm saying I want my son and daughter to come because they spend too much time in front of screens and I want them out in the real world. Now, one of the things here is that it hasn't asked me for my last name. So that's not ideal. So I'll notice here, try to get their first and last name, try to get their first name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the instruction here. And this is useful because if you are doing AI yourself, you'll find that occasionally it will glitch like that. And by doing this separately, it just makes it a bit more prominent. So that still hasn't asked me. So make sure to get there. Perfect. So you can see now that it's actually gone and asked me for the last name. So sometimes if you don't make it prominent enough, the AI can miss this. So if you're writing your own prompts, it's important to recognize that sometimes it can miss things like that. Now let's do another one. And so I'm going to say, I have a booking for the end of the month in the fun night, but I am now on night shift and can't make it. Can I cancel? So you'll notice that it's then gone and given me an alternative night. So I'll say, yeah, now I am on night shifts. I can't do any evenings. Now it did suggest a breakfast, but let's see. And you see it's given me the breakfast burnout session, which is exactly what I would like it to do. So it's essentially been able to reason with me, give me some alternatives. And again, it's really important that I gave it the available nights and said, look, this is how you should handle a cancellation request. Because if I don't, it will, again, just go off and do whatever it thinks. Whereas what I want is I want it to be following a specific cancellation process. And you'll notice that here it talks about, my family's journey towards being healthy heroes and energy explorers is important. Now, if I was to go through here and then say system information, this is David, and we know that he booked this because he wanted his son and daughter to not be in front of screens so much. So you see that it's also given me a personalized thing about great alternative to screen time. So because I've told it to try and remind me about why it was important, it's actually done a really good job because I've given it specific information. So you can see here that for things like bookings or customized items, like let's say, someone calls up and says, hey, I'd like to get a pen. And, you might be, well, what's the color of the ink? What's the diameter of the nib? All of those different things. How many do you want? What sort of shipment? And AI can essentially coach someone through all of those, and it can deal with ambiguity. So when somebody says, oh, the red one, and you go, is that the dark red or the light red? It can actually do all of those things. Now, when we go job management, so job management's a really powerful area. So you can imagine that you've got somebody out on site and they're recording a job. That could be an inspection, or it could be a site visit for a repair or something. And then what happens is that they actually could speak and say their job report, and AI can translate that into text. And then another AI can go, has this covered all of these key points? And then it can ask and say, let's say someone says, okay, well, I went through and I polished all the doorknobs and I swept under the cupboards. And then the AI could go, okay, but did you also remember to place the key in the meter box, because that's a particular job instruction here? And the person could go, yep, I've done that. And so it can then ask for further clarifying information to amend that job report. And once that's been done, it can then do a quality check, make sure that the information is there. It can clarify, it can remove any inappropriate words, it can expand out. So, swept under the sink could be, carefully swept under the sink, removing any dust and debris or something like that. And if the person says, cleaned under the sink, it's looking really shoddy and probably needs a repair, it could say, noted that the sink's age is showing and may require some additional repairs in future. So it's translating what the person has said, keeping the meaning, but actually and making it a bit more palatable, a bit nicer. Something that we're actually doing is that you imagine job tickets come in. We actually review those tickets, check the amount of time that was spent versus how much budget was spent. We actually look at the health. Has it been addressed on time? Has the customer been contacted? Have we gone over budget? So you imagine that if you had a project manager look in at a ticket, it would be, it might take them, 5 minutes to read through the comments, check the timesheets, check what's going on, and AI can do that. And, you imagine that over hundreds of tickets, doing that every single day, your AI can check every ticket every single day and make sure that it's being addressed, that it's on budget, that if it's gone over budget, that somebody's followed up on it. All of those things can be managed. If the ticket has been rated as urgent, has somebody addressed it? Has it been left to sit there? And so the AI can manage all of those things. Another thing that we do is that we take our visual prototypes. So you imagine a piece of software, it has buttons and fields, and AI can check that for things like, does it follow user interface standards? Like, does the next button appear on the right and the back button on the left? Are the things appropriately named? Are there spelling mistakes? Does every button have a function against it? So your AI can review all of these sorts of things against quality standards. You can automate purchase orders. You can do document filing and categorization. So imagine, again, you have a job, a document comes in, the AI can read that document and work out what it is and say, well, this is a purchase order, or this is an invoice, or this is a job information sheet, or this is a specification document. And it can then file that in the correct folder automatically. And so a lot of people are dealing with lots of documents, and having the ability to file them is really important. It can extract information from those documents. So for example, let's say the document comes in and it's a purchase order. You might want to pull out the purchase order and the items that are against it. Or if it's a spec sheet, you might want to pull the tolerances out or something like that. And that can be really valuable. Customer support. So With AI, you can build custom chatbots that sit on your website that customers can talk to. You can have email bots that take emails that come in for requests for information. So a customer might be asking, how's my project going? Can you give me a status update? What happened to this ticket? Anything like that. Can you tell me when the release to UAT will be? The AI can look at the schedule, look at the tickets, and can actually give a description back to the customer, allowing for the information that you choose to let it release. So you might say, well, look, there's this certain internal information that we don't want to release to the customer, but this external information we do, or we want to reinterpret that information in a different way. You can answer questions about invoices. So for example, what was this invoice for? Can you resend it? Can you send me a remittance advice? And AIs can also detect the tone of an email. And if the person seems upset, they can escalate that to a manager automatically. And so just as an example about an invoice, so I have an example here. So this is an account support robot. It's still for family fun. And so what I've now done is I've given some examples of a typical request would be to resend an invoice, send an explanation of an invoice. When you get a request to resend an invoice, as a first step, make sure you have this information: the company name, the invoice number, the person requesting the invoice, the email of the person requesting the invoice. Once you've confirmed that, say that you will send the invoice to the original email on the account and tell them that this person requested it. And I've also said, try not to ask more than 1 or 2 questions at a time. So if I run that now, so I'll say 1IT. Just saying. So this has done exactly what I've wanted. Now, the emails, if you don't like the tone of the emails, obviously we can change the tone that it uses for those, and whether or not we'd want to ask 2 questions at once. In a chat, you'd probably want to ask 1 at a time. But this is just a good example of how you can use AI to answer, account support requests and things like that as well. HR, people and culture. We all have people, and it's a big part of running a business these days. And hiring is certainly something a lot of people are facing challenges with at the moment. So you can use AI to go through people's resumes. And so while an applicant tracking system or a HR system might do keyword searches on resumes, you can actually now do meaning searches. So you could say, review it and say, I'm looking for everyone with a bachelor's or higher from an Australian university that was within the last 3 years, for example. Or I'm interested in anyone with a degree in a biological science or human bioscience or something like that. And it can actually go through that. Now, probably more powerful than that is that we ask candidates questions and they can give written or spoken responses. And then the AI can actually analyze those responses to see how valid they are. Because you imagine that you get candidates and they're submitting, sometimes we get hundreds or thousands of candidates for a position, and somebody having to go through and review every response is incredibly time consuming. But you can take those responses and feed them into an AI and analyze them for correctness. And I'll show exactly how we do that in a moment. You could also do transcriptions of meetings, interviews, and then recommend additional follow-up questions. So, you could have advice to the AI that says, if you ask a question like this and the candidate answers like that, you should ask this follow-up question, and the AI can be monitoring a real-time transcription of the conversation and giving advice. So in terms of questions, so I'll give an actual example. So this is a position that we just recently hired for HR assistant. The candidate has answered an interview question. Your job is to assess the response according to the marking key. And it talks about how I'd like it. The reason that I'm quite particular about the response is it goes into a spreadsheet, which is what I'll show in a second. So here the candidate response has said client name is incorrect. And the question was identified the discrepancy between the job instruction and the job result. Type your answer in the box below, and there was a picture. And then here there's a marking key. So the person was supposed to pick up these 5 points. There's a description of them, and each of them has a point value. Now I can submit this. So you'll see here that it's gone through and it said, yep, that person gets 1 point because it got the other ones wrong. Now, what I'm going to do is just going to reduce this to make it a bit more predictable. So the client name is incorrect. And the invoice total does not handle GST properly. So let's see if it then gives me the point for that. So you see it said that the invoice total is incorrect. It's given me a point for that. The client name is incorrect, so it gets a point for that. So now that answer gets 2 points. Now, the way that we run that is I have a spreadsheet, and each of the candidates gets put into this spreadsheet. And then what we do is we actually create these prompts, and this prompt is exactly what you're seeing in here. The only difference is that we actually put their response in here. And then, so here's the first question, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And then you'll see here, the AI has responded. And then what I do is I extract out the point value, and then that gives me a total. So we can run that over hundreds of candidates and get their responses and score them up. And then that creates a shortlist. So for example, in this finance position, we had 400 responses. We shortlisted 25, and then somebody manually reviewed those 25 answers. And then we interviewed the top, I think it was 10 or 15 candidates. So managing those 400 responses would have been impractical, but using AI, it was much more possible. You can also use AI. You can feed it in your policies and procedures, and then you can create a chatbot that allows your employees to ask questions. You know, what's the policy for medical leave? How much notice or how many days off do I have before I have to give a medical certificate? Or what's the policy for work from home? Would I be allowed to take my laptop home, whatever? These things can all be in a policy document, and then staff can just ask those questions. It can also help train them up as well. So they can ask, how would I do this job? And it will say, well, you do this, this, and they could ask a question, oh, how would I do that? And it can give them more detail, summarizing all of your training material. And it's a lot friendlier than reading a bunch of long and boring documents. And then there's also research and development. So you'll find that you can go through and you can research your clients, your suppliers, your competitors. And one of the things that you could do is that you could look at somebody, research them on LinkedIn. You could research the company. You could then take their profile, their company profile, your company profile, and then say, I'd like you to do a custom outreach to this person using the information you know about them and their business to create a personalized message. And it could be something along the lines of, hi, David, I saw that you recently liked this LinkedIn post about company culture. We specialize in taking company culture, And so what it's doing is it's using what you know about that person to write an email that looks like you've actually sat there watching them. You can also do document analysis. So as an example, we download PDFs from a feed. We analyze those documents according to a set of criteria, asking a set of questions. We extract that information, and then we take that information and we store it in a customized database that then allows the customer to query that PDF. Oh, sorry, not the PDF, the aggregation of PDFs, because there's thousands and thousands of PDFs. The data is being pulled out in a structured form and then being stored in a database that's used for reporting. So just some tips on that. If you are asking questions or analyzing really large documents, they may need some special treatment. Sometimes you need to ask the same question multiple ways. So what you can find is that if you ask a question, sometimes the AI doesn't quite pick up on it and it will give you a wrong answer. But if you ask a question and then you ask the same question in a slightly different way, you'll find that the two sort of change its way of thinking enough that it can answer the question correctly. It's really quite strange, but it just tends to be that sort of repetition in a slightly different way, just directs it to think more carefully about that topic. And I think when it thinks more carefully about the topic, then it's able to give a better answer. You can also ask intermediate questions. So let's say, for example, you give it some information and there's enough information to come to a conclusion. So for example, the budget was 5 hours, there was 2 hours, 2 hours, and 2 hours. Now you can tell me, well, that's 6 is more than 5, so it's over budget. But sometimes the AI doesn't quite get that. So if you go, there's 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, the budget is 5 hours. Is it over budget? No, it's not. And it just gets confused. So what you can do is ask an intermediate question, which is how many hours have been worked on the project? And then is the number of hours worked on the project more than the budget? And then it will go, well, the number of hours worked is 6. And then it will go, well, 6 is more than 5. So yes, the project is over budget. So asking that intermediate question can be really helpful in getting a more accurate answer. So there's no hard and fast rule for when to do it. But if you find that, sometimes the AI is not giving correct answers, trying repetition or an intermediate question can really help. And the more context you give it and explain terms can be really helpful as well, because if you don't, what happens is that the AI can get confused, especially if you're dealing with multiple parties. Like in one example, we had a person who was booking, we had a person in the meeting, we had a worker who was also in the meeting, and the AI was continuously getting the wrong answer. But when I explained and said, well, this meeting involves 4 different parties, this party, this party, this party, and this party, here is all their roles. Now I want you to look at this email and tell me who this person, the name of this person, it then is able to pull it out. So just explaining the role helps it be more accurate. So that's the examples. Now, a lot of people have been asking about privacy. Some people have confidential information that can't be moved offshore. And there are types of AIs that can be run locally. Now, ChatGPT is state of the art. It is a very, very powerful AI. It is very, very capable, but it's in the US. And that means that if your clients or you're regulated and you can't move your data offshore for whatever reason, then you wouldn't be able to use ChatGPT. But there are models that aren't quite as good as ChatGPT, but you can run them locally. So you can run them in Australia on a server, or in some cases, even on your own desktop. Now, the capability of a model is to a degree a function of size. And you can think of that as like the size of an engine in a truck, which determines how much it can carry. So models go measured on the number of parameters. So you have a 1B, and the B is for billion parameters, a 3B, a 7B, a 13B, a 30B, and a 65B, or even more model. Bigger is typically better. So the more parameters, the more capable that model is of learning and thinking and reasoning. But a model can be fine-tuned on your specific tasks. So while ChatGPT can translate into French, and it can write a sonnet, and it can describe a picture and do all of these things, Your AI typically is only needed to do a small number of things. So you can typically take a smaller AI and train it, what's called fine tuning, to do your specific tasks. And then what you'll find is that a smaller model that's been fine tuned will outperform a general model that hasn't been fine tuned, because that smaller model is devoting more of its brain power to doing the thing that you want it to do. So that's certainly an opportunity. If you want to run something locally, then it can be fine-tuned and it will then do your jobs much more capably. And then typically you're trying to run on the smallest model you can, because the smallest model is the easiest to run, the cheapest, in the same way of a truck engine. The smaller the engine, the less expensive it's going to be. There are lots of different models. You've got Llama, the one I mentioned before. There's Palm from Google. There's Falcon. There's Orca and Phi. This is a very rapidly changing field. These two models only came out in the last 2 weeks. And this older model is only maybe 4 to 6 weeks old. It is a very rapidly evolving field, but certainly there are models that you can run in Australia that can manage your data privately. Engaging your team. Some of your team may be afraid about AI. What does it mean for my job security? What will it mean for my future? The answer, I think, is that AI lets humans focus on a higher level of work. The AI handles the mundane work, and the users are doing the more interesting, the more diverse, the more thinking work. And it removes the repetition, the boring parts of their job. The boring, repetitious part of their job, routine part, can be handled by AI. And the opportunity is that, you've seen when I've been writing the AI and telling it what to do, it's just normal English. So you can actually engage your staff to create their own AI agents, and that allows you to then capture that knowledge. Because then you capture the knowledge, it's not stuck in their head, it's out there in a prompt that the AI can use forever. Now, those things of letting people work on higher level, improving productivity, more output for the same labor, the same cost, that makes team members more valuable, which means potentially you can increase their pay, reduce their working hours for the same pay. There's a lot more flexibility there. And in a competitive labor market, that can be a big competitive advantage, because that allows you to offer more to your employees than somebody else who isn't automating their tasks is able to do. So I guess to sort of finalize up, if you're looking to get started yourself, you're looking to DIY, just remember AI is not omniscient. You need to give it background. Give the AI a role. You're an expert salesperson. Who are you? What do you do? Who is it for? Why do they want it? You need to give it facts. So it doesn't know, what different types of trucks you have available or what the schedule is or anything like that. You have to put all of that information in. Be specific. What's the kind of result? Do you want a long result? 300 words? A short result? 5 words? What tone? Happy, sad, formal, threatening? And what format? Do you want it in text, just plain text? Do you want it in a list? Do you want it in comma separated that you could paste into Excel? It can be quite flexible here. Give examples of what good looks like. Because this was just an exercise, I haven't given examples of that. But if you have examples of the best support email that's ever been written and you paste that in, the AI will churn those out day in and day out. So if you think, what would my best support person do on their best day ever? That's what you want to give as an example to the AI. Asking intermediate questions, which was the ones I said in the middle, where it was, tell me the total value of the hours. Chain of thought is where you ask the AI to explain its reasoning. Now, if you're asking something complicated, that can really help, because for some reason, if you ask an AI to explain how it came to a conclusion, it comes to a better conclusion. It's just like doing workings in a maths test. You're more likely to get the right answer. The AI is the same. Use headings and refers. So remember, I use those square brackets. So you'll see here, I've said interview question, And you'll see here I've referred to interview question, and I've said marking key, and I've said the marking key. And that's just meant that it's much less ambiguous. And then finally, last tip is that sometimes if you're dealing with something really complex, your prompts can get really, really long, and the AI will tend to get lost. And so what you can do is that you can provide specialized agents or AI modules. And so what happens is that you might have a module that just does cancellations, another that just does reschedules, another that handles complaints, another that makes new bookings. And that means that each one of those agents handles a procedure, and then you can be much more descriptive, and you'll find that it won't get lost or confused. That's really quite an advanced technique, and at the moment I've only ever had one case to do that, but it certainly means that it is a very powerful technique to use. So I guess at this point I'll open up to questions. So let's see, are there any questions at the moment? I'll just go and look at the FAQs. If you have questions at the moment, just paste them in the FAQs. So that should be down the bottom. There's a Q&A section.
Dave, there's a couple that have come in over the course of the talk. There's one here from, I'm not sure of the name because they've signed in under Sales 58, but we're looking to use AI type technology for parts interpretation. We receive requests for pricing on goods to be supplied. Our personnel look at descriptions of parts and essentially Google it. We have potentially a huge database of parts with detailed description. We want the AI to choose the best fit.
Okay, so essentially, like I'm just looking at the question in a bit more detail, because you've said you've got 11,000 parts and you can restrict that with a filter. AI should kill this. Yeah, so definitely. So the idea is that you can now restrict that. And one of the things that you can do is that because you've got AI, I guess, is the engine, when you've got a person looking through something, 12 is probably a lot and they have to go through it. But with AI, you could even get that down to 24. And then the AI can look at the descriptions and go, here's the description of the part that they want. Here's the description of the other parts. And here's how you determine suitability. So if you think about the example that I gave of the request for proposal, you could say, you know, similarity, let's say the diameter must be an exact match, but the breaking strain can be higher, can be the same or higher. The thread size has to be an exact match. The corrosion resistance has to be the same or higher, and so on and so on. And that's just an example because I don't know what type of parts there are, but an AI could read the description, pull out that information, read the other comparator, and then go through each one of them and then tell which one is the best match for it. Okay, any other questions?
There's another one from Mark. How do I integrate AI with my website?
So it depends on what you're trying to do. So AI could be used. So AI is probably going to be used to answer questions or place orders is the most likely thing. So, you know, just recently I ordered a piece of gym equipment. They had a chat feature on there. So the way that they use chat is that it uses Facebook Messenger. But there are also, and you can integrate AI with Facebook Messenger, or you can use another kind of a chat program that doesn't take you into Facebook Messenger and integrate that with AI. And so what you could do is you could have an AI that then answers questions using the information on your website, as well as additional information. So, you know, people go, oh, you know, is there a warranty on this product? And then, you know, it will know that, yes, the warranty is 2 years on the engine and 1 year on the belt or something like that. And it can actually then answer those questions for people that don't read, or it can also have more information, because at the end of the day, you can't have 100 pages well, you can, I guess, have 100 pages on your website, but nobody will read 100 pages. But you can have 100 pages in your AI, and a person can just ask, is it suitable for this type of task? Has it ever been used for this? And the AI can actually trawl through hundreds of pages and then give a meaningful response. And then when the person wants to place an order, it can actually then step them through the ordering process. Hopefully that answers that question.
There's another one from Andrew. Can you demonstrate how to feed a document for GPT to read as a base reference?
I'm thinking as base reference, you're meaning to ask questions for it. So there's a number of different ways that you can do it. So there is an extension for ChatGPT called, I think it's Talk to PDF. I generally don't use that because I've got more specific use cases. So often I'm querying multiple documents in the same way. So I just write a program to do it. But what you can do is that you can go into ChatGPT. There's a plugin called, I think, Talk to PDF or Talk to Documents. You load in your PDF and then you can actually go and do it in there like that. I don't think we have the time to run through and demonstrate it. And since I haven't done it, I wouldn't really think it would be a good idea to do it live. But yeah, so sometimes I'll convert a PDF into text and then I'll feed that into ChatGPT, and that could just be copy, paste into ChatGPT. I'll say, consider the document below, which is a contract, dash, dash, dash. Can you answer the following question? And then I'll paste in the document. And for smaller documents, that's certainly workable. For larger documents, I will just quickly demonstrate, is that you'll see here that you have GPT-3 Turbo and GPT-4. There's this GPT Turbo 16K. Now, the GPT-3.5, which is the ChatGPT that you probably all know and love, is the less capable version, and it deals with a smaller volume of data. ChatGPT Turbo 16 is able to handle approximately 12,000 words, maybe 13,000 words. So 16 is 16,000 tokens, and a token is about 3/4 of a word. That's a weird way of expressing it, but that's just how they do it. Even GPT-4 at the moment can only handle 8,000 tokens. There is supposed to be a 32,000 token model coming out, in which case you could paste in almost a novel and ask questions. But at the moment, this is the best one that there is. And you can paste in a lot of text. So you could say something like, if I could go into 16K, you are a document analysis engine. Consider the document below and answer the user questions. Now, you almost certainly want to prime it as in, you're a lawyer or an environmental scientist or something like that. You're considering these sorts of issues. I'd paste the document here, and then I'd say, can you tell me, is there any mention of rehabilitation of the soil or something like that? And then it will go back and answer that question. Hopefully that's answered that. I think Scott's just said, yeah, the copy and paste has character limits. So certainly in ChatGPT it does. And even here, about 12,000 words. And so in one of the tips, I think I mentioned that, yeah, large documents need special treatment. So you could try to the Talk to PDF, or if you're interested, we could probably talk to you about, I have a utility which allows us to do essentially the same thing. And one of the things I was going to offer is, look, if you give me an email on my email within a week, happy to give you a free 1-hour discussion about, what AI could do, give you some tips. If you're interested, I'll give you the example spreadsheet that I showed, and also the tool that I use to actually run that spreadsheet, so that if you have a set of questions like you want to evaluate candidates, you'll be able to do that. Any other questions? Because I know that we are pretty close. Well, I think we've actually run slightly beyond the end of time. I see there's one more question. I think we might call that an end. If you do have any other questions, I will just say avail yourself of the free 1-hour consult. It's not a hard sell. It's really just there to answer questions, and then hopefully if you decide that you want to do something more complicated, because while a lot of people can use AI to a basic extent, some of the more advanced things like querying large numbers of documents, setting up a private AI that is your own and fine-tuning it or training it for your own purposes is more sophisticated, and that's definitely something that we can help with. So the question was, can GPT take the customer's question and turn it into a database query and then interpret the result from the user? And the answer is absolutely. There's a number of ways to do it. One option would be to write a plugin. That's probably quite advanced. But the other thing is that there are functions, and we actually do that quite a lot. So you could say, let's say a person has a product and they're like, well, what's the delivery time on this? You could then query your database, check inventory, assuming that your website doesn't have inventory, and it could then come back. Or let's say you're talking about a schedule. A person says, can I book in an electrician for tomorrow? Your AI could then do a query, find which dates are available, and say, look, I can have an electrician around your house at either 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Does that work for you? Yes. Okay. Can I have your name? I'll book it in. So in fact, you can have a conversation with an AI that's talking to a database, not just once, but multiple times, maybe for availability, maybe for what job types there are. And then once that's done, it's actually then storing the job in the database. So I think that will be the last question. As I said, if you do have any more questions, or you'd like some advice, or want to talk through an opportunity for AI in your business, please send me an email. And, look, I'd love to talk to you. Right now, I'm spending probably at least 50% or more of my time on AI. It's a really, really interesting topic, and I think it's going to transform businesses dramatically in the next few years. And the companies that can take advantage of it will be the ones that I guess are the best place to thrive and prosper in the AI world that's to come. So yeah, thank you very much all for coming. And I hope you found it useful.